It takes a lot of effort to be creative. See Mario Tennis on the N64 and GameCube. You need creativity to spruce up your plumbing tennis crossover event, so you throw in ghosts, minigames, characters overflowing with charm with unique power-ups, making your foray into potentially one-dimensional sports experience a lot of fun. And then you see the complete opposite approach being taken with Mario Tennis on the Wii U, a game with the features being playing on a grass court or a clay court. Ooh, exhilarating. It is clearly very tough to be creative indeed. In a wrestling setting, creativity is oozing from every orifice of the product. Creative storylines, creative matches, creative show names, and, in the topic of today's video, creative characters. The characters are often what drives many of the people to become fans of this wacky business. But while creative characters like The Undertaker, Mr. Perfect, and The $1 Million Man drew the ire of fans from a previous generation, today we will be taking a look at some of the most creative characters to grace our wrestling watching eyeballs in more recent years. I'm Tempest, hailing from Parts Fun Known, and these are the 10 most creative gimmicks in modern wrestling. But before we get on with our list, make sure of course that you subscribe and start your most creative gimmick, that being of someone subscribed to Parts Fun Known. It's not that creative, there are over 200,000 people who do it too. But become one of them. Number 10, MJF. In general, this will more be a list of creative gimmicks than creative-minded performers, so names like Kenny Omega, Bryan Danielson, and Hiroshi Tanahashi won't be found here, although in some cases the creativity of the performer also results in a character being created that matches that level of creativity, such is the case with MJF. On the surface, MJF's character would appear fairly straightforward. A throwback 80s heel with a massive chip on his shoulder is a mega simplified way of putting it, but for years that's what we were shown. However, over the last year, the layers of this character have been continually pulled back, revealing motivations, tragic origins, and heaping piles of depth, resulting in one of the most intriguing characters in wrestling today. Nothing about what MJF does is easy, and he benefits from being one of the most gifted talkers of his generation, capable of adding even more depth to his character with just a single promo segment whenever he so chooses. The other gimmicks on this list may be a little bit more out there, shall we say, but MJF's increasingly human character would have been an unacceptable omission. Number 9, Toru Yano. It may be hard to imagine now, but at one point, resident New Japan Pro Wrestling goofball Toru Yano was a brawling bruiser, more akin to Tomohiro Ishii than Colt Cabana. However, while Yano may have been an integral member of Great Bash Heel and Chaos during the faction's early heel days, he will be best remembered as one of the great comedy wrestlers of all time. While Toru Yano is a capable wrestler, as seen in his match with Tomohiro Ishii in the 2018 G1 Climax, Yano has another passion in life: selling his DVDs. Honestly, most of the time, his job title should probably be DVD salesman first and wrestler second. Yano is routinely seen peddling his DVDs before matches to fans, commentators, and even the other wrestlers. He just really wants everyone to see the good times that he and the Chaos Lads had that one time. That's not even taking into account his favorite ways of winning matches, such as using wrist tape to tie his opponents to guardrails and even the young lions at ringside. Truthfully, there are loads of creative comedy characters in wrestling, particularly at the indie level, but Toru Yano's dedication to the bit puts him a notch above the rest. Number 8, Malachi Black. We have still yet to see the full realization of Malachi/Aleister Black's character on national television. His return to SmackDown in 2021 looked hella promising, with a bunch of spooky lore-based vignettes hyping up his return in a Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows-esque art style, talking about the Dark Father. Then he was released before we could ever find out what this character would be. Then he made his way to AEW, where we got even more lore-based build for his character, now surrounded by the ever-growing House of Black. Black has always had a fantastic on-screen presentation with awesome entrances and a great look, but a promotion has yet to fully get behind him and allow his character to fully take shape. Black has described his vision for his character in the past as the devil with memory loss, knowing he had done something wrong that he had to pay for, but without knowing exactly what. All of this is analyzed much more in depth in Laurie's excellent explained video on the man himself, which was even endorsed by Black. So make sure you give that a watch while we all wait and pray for Black to be given a chance to show his true creative potential. Number 7, Johnny Swinger. Diving into the world of Impact Wrestling now with another comedy character, Johnny Swinger. With Impact being watched by a much smaller and more hardcore fan base now than in the past, that fan base allows the company to do things a bit more tongue-in-cheek than they would have otherwise, with a higher percentage of their fans likely to be in on the bit. Such is the case with Johnny Swinger, a walking caricature of a territorial wrestler. He might as well have stepped right out of a time machine with the date of origin listed as 1979, because look at this behavior. He thanks top guys for the house, his attire is typically comprised of Zubaz and fanny packs. He was even taken to an actual broadcast edition of Wrestler's Court in 2020. As a whole, Swinger is a walking wrestling inside joke. While this could be absolutely horrendous if presented to an unknowing audience, as is usually the case when major promotions try to make light of insider terms and knowledge, Swinger presents this with just the right amount of charm to make it work. Number 6. Abaddon. Horror doesn't always work when blended with wrestling. Sometimes it can, but sometimes it comes across hokey, goofy, and silly, the true unholy trinity. One such character that hits the horrifying mark, however, is AEW's Abaddon. Truly the most visually unsettling performer in wrestling today, and maybe ever for that matter, Abaddon arrived in AEW in mid-2020 and remains one of the promotion's most winningest wrestlers. They have only lost 2 matches in their AEW run, one to Hikaru Shida and one to Britt Baker, the tip-top of AEW's women's division. The character can be a bit one-dimensional, as Abaddon is just a horror movie creature come to life, and thus can't really do most wrestling storylines, but this is an instance of a performer being a master of body language, with Abaddon's perfect physical performance lending so much to the presentation of their panic-inducing character. Number 5. Finn Balor. And to be clear, this is NXT Finn Balor, where the demon actually made sense and not the main roster, because obviously, Finn Balor, much like Abaddon, is a master of the physical performance, using his control over what he does and when to put on some of the most captivating entrances of all time. The NXT presentation of Balor and the Demon was very simple and very effective. He would cover himself in face and body paint with a terrifying demon face seemingly emerging from his body in an effort to psych out his opponents ahead of big matches. Balor is not the only person to use paint to add a little bit of extra flavor to his big matches by any means, but the Demon was perhaps the best and most creative use of this tactic to date. On the main roster, Balor was instead like, "Bleh, I'm a spooky ghost demon lad, bleh," with the gimmick instead being that he was actually some sort of supernatural demon king. In theory, this would appear to be the much more creative gimmick of the two, but the logic of the character would instantly fall apart when you would see him squash Baron Corbin in minutes at SummerSlam 2018 as the Demon and then get squashed without the paint shortly thereafter. NXT continues to prove that simple is sometimes better, with Finn Balor reigning as the top guy of the brand for years off the back of this incredible character. Number 4. Danhausen. From one demon to another. While Finn Balor was a man using scare tactics to get into his opponent's head, Danhausen is actually from hell. He is very nice, he is very evil. Danhausen is a divisive wrestler in the sense that it is very easy to not get his shtick. He's got a weird, goofy voice, he has the added layer of supernatural powers that sometimes are sold and sometimes aren't, depending on who he points his magic fingers at to place on an evil curse. It's a lot, and comedy characters aren't everyone's cup of tea to begin with much of the time. Personally, while I may not laugh at all of Danhausen's segments by any means, I do like to see that someone like Danhausen, who is totally committed to being a real-life wrestling cartoon character, can still succeed in the wrestling business. To see Danhausen, a skinny guy who very clearly was a big wrestling fan, get over and get signed by All Elite Wrestling is cool to me. He sure is committed to the bit too, isn't he? He does interviews in character, and really, as a concept, it sure is creative, isn't it? A demon who is evil and also friendly. Incredible. Why that demon has chosen a wrestling ring for his preferred arena for spreading his unique brand of pleasant evil? Not quite sure, but in terms of sheer creativity, this is top-notch stuff. Number 3. Broken Matt Hardy. One of those ultra-creative wrestling minds we were talking about earlier. Matt Hardy is one of only a few people to have won the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Award for Best Gimmick more than once with multiple gimmicks. First with the also excellent version 1 character in 2002, and then in 2016 with the introduction of the Broken Universe. We might be getting into one of the others in just a little bit as well. Matt Hardy's mind exists on a different plane of existence than the rest of us, and it is on that plane of reality that we get the layers of this gimmick. Back in the days of TNA, Matt was broken, resulting in what started as merely a bizarre speaking pattern and a blonde streak in his hair. Everybody has a little broken phase in their lives. However, what started as merely a mental breakdown evolved into teleportation, a brother Nero, attack drones, dilapidated boats, and an ever-growing cast of wacky characters and powers. WWE and AEW have failed to create the same type of magic for the character in recent years, but in every incarnation, you still get to see the creativity of Matt Hardy shine through, whether he's playing chess with Napoleon reincarnated into a fish, or teleporting from the seats to the ring for a promo. Number 2. Orange Cassidy. I will never forget being in the crowd for Orange Cassidy's match with Pac at Revolution 2020 and seeing the crowd in Chicago give a standing ovation for the comedy wrestler who puts his hands in his pockets, only for an industry professional next to me who will remain nameless make a remark about how the crowd was cheering for the death of the wrestling business. Moron. Anyway, Orange Cassidy is among the smartest workers in the history of wrestling because he has completely mastered the art of getting the biggest reaction for doing the least amount of work. His gimmick is simply that he doesn't care. He's too cool for school if school was fighting dudes. It is not only an incredibly creative and expertly executed character, but it works because under the right circumstances, Orange does care. If Orange never cared, it would be virtually impossible to get invested in seeing Orange's big matches, but because you know that Orange Cassidy actually is a world-class wrestler who can hang with the very best, you watch with anticipation for when Orange decides to care. Brilliant! Anybody who can get paid for doing the least has beaten capitalism and is my fucking role model, an icon. At number 1, The Fiend. Really, Bray Wyatt could be on this list multiple times with multiple different characters, which is appropriate because Bray is the other one on this list who won the Observer Gimmick Award multiple times with multiple gimmicks. His cult leader gimmick is personally my favorite iteration of Wyatt's different incarnations, but it is impossible to deny that The Fiend is Bray's most creative creation. The split personality between Mr. Rogers Bray and The Fiend almost deserve 2 spots as well, but they really are 2 halves of the same coin. From the first appearance of Mr. Rogers Bray in the Firefly Funhouse to the debut of The Fiend, Bray's deeply layered and multidimensional unraveling of WWE's tropes was must-see TV, and while The Fiend absolutely got hocus-pocused out almost immediately after that, with Hell in a Cell ruining a lot of fans' enjoyment of the character, it did rebound if only for one night with the Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania 36. The match served as the ultimate culmination of Wyatt's creativity through the most incredible deep dive analysis of WWE to ever occur on WWE television. The character returned to its hocus-pocus bullshit almost immediately afterwards, but the highs of The Fiend really are perhaps the most creative moments we have seen in wrestling over the last decade plus. And that's our list. Make sure, of course, that you like this video, subscribe, and enable notifications to always on so you never miss a fun list just like it, and make sure to comment down below which creative wrestling characters you think we left off. I'm Tempest, hailing from parts unknown. Jam that jam.